While a heartbreaking incident was occurring at the Loud House, another family was busy relaxing, or at the very least doing their evening duties. At the Santiago residence, the father of the family was busy doing some work on his desktop, while the mother was fixing up dinner. Two children sat on the couch, eyes glued to the TV for at least a half hour. They had been bickering over what show they could watch. Bobby wanted to watch some cheesy romance movie or dreamboat, but his sister wouldn't have none of that. In response, Ronnie Ann wanted to watch an R-rated movie that was playing on a different channel, but Bobby knew she was way too young to be seeing something like that. After the consistent channel switching, they ended up watching a show of police officers pursuing criminals. Bobby looked at interest with a few cars that were chasing after their several neighbors. Come on, get 'em! Ronnie Ann looked indifferent to it, but in the end she had a smirk at how the cops were going roundabout of trying to corner their druggie in the car. A minute later, one of the cop cruisers finally manages to intercept the sedan, bringing this close to an end. Ah, about time. They could have grabbed him 4 minutes ago. Honestly, it was just a routine traffic stop. If he kept calm, the police wouldn't have known anything. But there he goes, driving away like he had been, the Hispanic boy ranted. Right, I'm gonna go get a drink. The Hispanic girl got up, seeing the only commercials that were playing. She won't admit it, but it was nice having these moments with Bobby, at least when he wasn't buried in his phone. The girl turned and saw her brother texting on his phone again. Not even 20 seconds and he's back on that thing, she muttered irritably. Walking to the kitchen, the tomboy saw her mother working on tonight's meal. From the smell of it, she was cooking up tamales. Grabbing a bottle of sports drink out of the fridge, Ronaldo started quenching her thirst as she walked back to the living room. Taking a moment to look out the window, she saw it was already dark outside. The moon giving its bright glow in the skies. Time sure flies when it's daylight savings. Before she could go sit on the couch again, something stood her out in the darkness. Someone was sitting on the light of the lamppost. Close by, Ronnie Ann shrugged, thinking it was just some random stranger, but once she caught the sight of the white hair, only one person came to mind. Lincoln? Her eyes were squinted, but of course, sure enough, her suspicions were right. The loud boy was sitting out there by himself. This triggered several alarm signals in her head. Something wasn't right. Why would Lincoln be out so late when he should be at home? Wouldn't his parents and his sisters be worried sick? His posture was slumped, and he was shaking visibly, while his white hair was disheveled. Almost looked like he was... Bobby looked up from his phone to see his sister standing out the window. You coming, Ronnie Ann? It's starting again. She didn't move. What you staring at? Instead of responding, the girl went to the front door and stepped outside, drawing even more confusion to her brother. Roberto got up and walked to the window, spotting his sister walking across the street. He also saw the boy considered a brother. What's your little bro doing out here? As Ronaldo drew closer, his cries became more clear as the distance between them decreased. Lincoln must have been so caught up in his depression to even notice her, as now she stood next to him, while he continued to sob. Lincoln? The boy became startled and looked up at her. Ronnie Ann nearly gasped in surprise. He had scratches, a few bruises on his face, and his eyes were red due to crying, and he had also had some blood on his chipped tooth. Speaking of blood, his fingers were red and bloodied as they were still bleeding. What happened to you? The boy shook his head, staring back at the ground. I don't want to talk about it. Lincoln, no one comes out in the middle of the night just to look for a complete mess, especially someone like you. So are you going to tell me yourself, or am I going to have to get it out of you? Ronaldo was met with silence, which surprised her. Normally whenever she threatened him with violence if he was hiding something, he'd tell her straight away. But instead, Lincoln didn't even flinch. Whatever was troubling him must have been deeper than she could imagine. It also pained on her to see him in such a state. Taking his good hand, Ronaldo pulled him up. Come on, where are we going? My place. Where else? She replied in a concerned tone, as she led him across the street. When they entered the house, Bobby grew extremely worried. Whoa, Lincoln, what happened? That's what I'm trying to figure it out, the Hispanic girl replied. She let go of the ashen-haired boy and was going to the kitchen. Mom, where do you keep your first aid kit? It's on my dresser, Hachita. Did you hurt yourself again? Miss Santiago turned. No, Lincoln was outside on the street. He's just come look at him, Ronaldo finally yelled out. Confused, the mother set the food in the oven before coming to the kitchen. She gasped in shock at what seeing the poor boy. Dios mío, what happened? She yelled, crouching down to get a better look at him. Ronnie Ann took as if her cue to get the medical supplies. Mr. Santiago grew a little irritated at the noise and stepped out of the office. What is all the noise about? He said in a thick Spanish accent. When he looked at Lincoln, was about to surprise everyone. You get in a fight, Nanito? His mother turned to him. Marcus, now isn't the time to joke about that. Maria, I'm just saying, like stuff like that happens. Ronaldo came back with the medical supplies as Miss Santiago had Lincoln sit at the table in the kitchen. She started cleaning off his face and the blood from his mouth. When the paradox was applied onto his scratches, Lincoln couldn't help but wince as it stung. Soon after, the boy had a few bandages on his face and mouth wiped clean. Then she moved to his fingers, which still bled like no tomorrow. Applying some wet towels, the Hispanic woman cleared the blood soon enough to see the bite marks on his hand. Maria looked at the wounds. It wasn't uncommon for someone to get bitten by a dog, rat, or occasionally an alligator, though the later result would be in missing digits. Years of medical training taught her how to identify what caused the injury. She was surprised that her bite wounds weren't from an animal, but from a human. Lincoln, do you know who bit you? The ashen-haired boy nodded, but didn't say anything after. Nina then took the peroxide and dabbed it onto a cotton ball. This is going to sting a bit. Ready? Lincoln nodded. In the second cotton ball made contact, he couldn't help but scream in pain. He knew it would hurt because the peroxide disinfecting his wounds, but it felt like someone just dipped his hand in a boiling pot of acid. Ronaldo and Bobby winced as they watched. Maria held his fingers as she applied healing deep cream and wrapped his fingers around the medical tape. Okay, now you won't be able to move your fingers for a while, but they should be healed in a few days, okay? The boy nodded in response. Want me to call your family? Lincoln's eyes went wide and quickly shook his head. No! He yelled out, shocking everyone. I'm sorry, but I just don't want to speak with my family for a while. He stayed as he averted his gaze, a few more tears pouring out of his eyes. Maria questioned as to why, but once again the boy was too distraught to say anything. Ronaldo and Bobby both looked at each other in worry before backing out into the living room. Harsh, does he at least want them to know where he is? The 17-year-old asked. At the moment, his phone vibrated and a message came in. The adolescent opened it to reveal a message from Lori. Bobby, this is literally urgent. Lincoln just literally told us off into a fight got into a fight with Lynn. We haven't been fair to him lately. Now he's ran away. We have no idea where he went. We're still out looking for him, but there's no sign of him anywhere. If you see him, please tell him we're very sorry and want him to come home. Lori. Bobby read over the message. Guess he got into a family fight. Ronnie Ann just looked in confused before her brother showed her the text. Well, that explained a few things, but there had to be more to this puzzle. From what she knew, Lincoln would get into fights with his siblings quite often, but it didn't seem bad enough to the point where it would cause him to flee. Looking back towards her brother, the tomboy saw he was about to call his girlfriend. Just before his finger could touch the dial button, Ronaldo smacked his phone out of his hands. What are you doing? She hissed. I'm just going to let them know where he is. They're worried about him, Ronnie Ann, Roberto replied, picking up his phone. Well, you think about putting that dial tone. Don't you think that maybe there's something bigger going on? I haven't seen Lincoln this upset in I've never seen him highly upset before, so I don't know. He probably talks to Clyde more about this, but if he had to run away from home over a fight, then it must have been mega levels of serious. Bobby then looked at her and then stared at his phone for a moment. I guess you're right, but what am I supposed to tell Lori? You know I don't like having to lie to her. We'll just suck it up and tell her we haven't seen him. They might stop and ask, so when that happens, let's just keep Lincoln out of sight. All right. I don't exactly like this plan, though. Luna, Lenny, and Lori were searching around the neighborhoods to find their brother. The rest of the family came to their senses. After a few minutes, they managed to find the musician around the park. She kept calling out to Lincoln, but was only met with silence. In order to cover more ground, the family split into three groups. Three eldest sisters would continue to look around the homes as Lincoln, likely that they didn't travel far. Lynn Sr., Luann, and Lucy would search around town, while Rita, the twins, Lisa, Lily, and Lynn Jr. searched around the areas Lincoln would frequently visit with Vanzilla. The minutes had turned into hours and the night drew on. The family was getting more and more desperate. Lori texted Bobby, her boyfriend, to let him know of the situation, and he replied he'd let her know if he saw the boy. Luna called Chunk to see if he could look around as well. With the mother and 5 of her daughters, they were growing weary and tired as midnight approached. Being up well past their usual sleeping time was not doing them any favors. As the baby of the family, Lily was already asleep. "Do you think we'll ever find him?" Lana asked, barely able to keep herself awake. "Of course we will. We'll find him. There's only so many places where he could be," Lola stated, equally tired, but more cranky. "Urgh, why didn't he have to run like that? And you could have just had to punch him, didn't you, Lynn?" the princess said accusingly. The Jacques didn't even turn to acknowledge to her little sister. She stayed uncharacteristically quiet throughout the whole trip. Her lower leg was bandaged up, but the 13-year-old soon found out she was unable to run, even with some trouble walking. According to Lisa, when Lincoln bit into her leg, he practically ruptured her Achilles tendon. She'd be unable to do any sport until it was healed, which the young genius estimated would be a couple of weeks to a month. Lynn utterly disheartened at the news. That was more months' worth of baseball games or doing anything down the drain, all because Lincoln managed to nail where it hurt the most. At first she was angry. Not only did Lincoln insult her skills and nearly bring her to her knees in a fight, of how effectively he looked away from the joys he's ever had, playing sports. All he had to do was accept the fact that he was good luck, and yet he just had to come off and tell everyone off. If he didn't want to be called bad luck, he shouldn't have just went along with her accusation. And now, she can't even maintain her favorite pastime. The family was torn, and they were out looking for him because he was too much of a sissy to stay in the house. But that was just because their pride was getting in the way again. The girl had quite literally beat down her anger to see the truth. After forcing Lincoln to spend his time suffering an embarrassment of being overheated by the constantly wearing of the team's mascot, she completely ignored how he felt and was more worried about luck that he'd bring. What kind of sibling cares only for the aspect of another may bring, not the person themselves? On top of the many times she had threatened him or messed with him for her own amusement. What really put the nail in the coffin was how immaturely she blamed him for the loss of the game when she forced him to come. Not only that, she single-handedly managed to get everyone in the family to not believe in this claim when he told the truth about faking his bad luck, causing the incident to spiral out even further. Long story short, Lynn felt like a total bitch. "I guess I brought this on myself. Lincoln's right. I am a loser," the Jacques said in her mind. Slumping to her seat, and she told him that she wished he was never born. Lana was drifting off to sleep, but suddenly snapped herself awake. "Ah!" she groaned. "Can't we just call police and let them handle this?" Her twin grabbed her by the jean straps. "Are you crazy? Do you know what the police will do when they get involved? I've seen so many crime movies, so you know what they'll do. They're going to ask us what happened before Lincoln ran away, and we'll have to come clean. They'll... The cleanest two finally fell asleep, with her adrenaline finally running dry. Lana followed her suit seconds later. As insane as Lola made it sound, she is right. Local law enforcement will question what led up to Lincoln's disappearance, and the results would be quite disastrous, Lisa explained, rubbing her eyes. "Mother, I know you are worried sick for Lincoln. I am as well, but I doubt we'll be able to find him before exhaustion reaches its peak." The 4-year-old yawned. Like any concerned mother, Rita didn't want to call quits on the search. She was still loathing in self-hate for going all on with her daughter's claims about Lincoln. Out of the two adults, the monarch was also closest to him. Hell, she was even still working on that base novel on her son, for crying out loud. No pun intended. Sure, Lincoln was a troublemaker at times, but there was so much the rest of her children, so why did Lincoln seem to have it off worse? Recalling him questioning if he'd better if he was a girl, Rita wanted to say no. After having so many daughters, bearing a son was probably the best thing that's ever happened in her life, especially when you considered she had 3 more girls afterwards. Problem was she didn't expect her son to lash out the way he did, leaving her and Lynn Sr. in a state of perplexed shock. They couldn't find even the will to separate their son and Lynn Jr. from their scuffle. This, and after agreeing to evacuate Lincoln from the house and remove all of his furniture, she felt effectively removed any right to call herself a mother. Seeing her daughter's tired state, Rita knew that they had to return home soon. With the twins and Lily fast asleep, Lisa was on her way to Dreamland, and that just left herself and Lynn awake. Looking at the rearview mirror, Rita could see the guilt over so clear on the Jacques' face. It'd be so stupid to ask if she was okay. No one in the family was, or will be until they find Lincoln. Focusing back on the road, Rita heard Lynn call to her. "Do you think we'll ever find him, Mom?" "We will, sweetie. We will, but probably not tonight." "Not tonight? It's only been a few hours. And the rest of your sisters are asleep. Plus, you girls still have school tomorrow." "I don't care much about school, Mom. I want to help find my brother and tell him that I didn't mean the stuff I said to him," Lynn then yelled, startling the twins and shaking Lisa out of her dream spell. "I love Lincoln. I really do. But what did I have to be acting so stupid?" Lynn kicked the back of the front passenger seat in frustration. "I know, sweetie. I know. But like Lisa said, we can't find him when everyone's half asleep. I'm taking you girls home, and I'll go back to look for a few more hours." "Lincoln! Lincoln!" Luna called out for the umpteenth time. "Luna, if he was out here, we would have literally found him by now," Lori stated. "We've been literally walking in circles. I've seen that same stop sign 4 times now." "Lori, you know damn well that we can't stop looking for him. It's our fault he ran off in the first place. Plus, he's only 11 years old," the musician barked in anger. "Luna, I know you're worried sick about him. I am too. Funny how much considering you used him as a footstool more than an actual brother," Luna retorted. "Excuse me. You had just as much fault as I do, Lenny included," Lori pointed out. "Even before then, you keep threatening to turn him into a pretzel just for being in your room. Need I need to remind you, you blast him out of your room with your stupid sound equipment?" "Girls," Lenny asked, You want to bring me up the times you made all of us do stupid favors for rides?" Luna fired back. "Girls," Lenny called again, becoming more irate than ever. "Says the girl who works hard so she could break our eardrums. You are not the one to talk with the attitude, whatever for Mom or Dada." "Girls!" Lenny screeched. She was met with angry glares. "Fighting isn't going to help us find Linky any faster. And you totes woke up the neighborhood." Lenny and Lori and Luna noted the number of houses had their lights on. No doubt the patrons had their much-needed sleep disturbed by their senseless shouting. 3 of the eldest checked their phone, noticing it was past midnight. Looking back at her sisters, she could see the bags of eyes of exhaustions. Even Lori herself was starting to grow tired. 4 hours of searching, they had nothing to show of it. Given the fact that their parents hadn't texted or called them to inform them they may have seen the boy, this meant that their trails turned cold as well. However, at that moment, Lori's phone vibrated as Rita's text came in, and Lenny and Luna looked hopeful. "Did someone find him?" the blonde asked. Lori took a moment and read over the message. "No, Mom's taking our sisters home as they're worn out. She'll go back to look afterwards." Another text popped up. "Dad says Lucy is passed out and Luann is dead tired." Luna leaned on the lamppost. "So that's it then? We're just giving up?" Her voice was on the edge of breaking. "Luna?" Lori then put the phone in her pocket. "We're not giving up. We just can't keep running around like this till we're exhausted. Plus, we still have school tomorrow, but I'm sure Mom and Dad will still look for him during that time. Lori, after all the times we got into fights, we stood still as a family, by far. This is the worst thing we've ever done. All Lincoln wanted was time to himself. He got it, bruh, but we ended up trying to push him out of our lives like he was some Ate her at a Mick Swagger concert. Tears began rolling down the musician's face, her wonderful voice now sounding like a scratch record. What kind of sisters are we? Lori and Lenny shared Luna's conviction. Lenny and Luna were largely considered the closest to the older ones to have a good relationship with their brother, and yet they ended up following some hive mentality to push him away just because of their own selfishness. Lori always had a bit of a rocky relationship with Lincoln, but deep down, she cared for him almost like a mother as much as she really did the young siblings. Taking out her phone, she dialed a number. Luna, I promise, miss you for once. When school's finished, we're going to bust our butts out and find our brother. I don't care if it kills us. Finding him and making sure he's safe is all that matters. Lori stayed firmly. Please be up right now, Bobby, she begged. At the Santiago house, things were quiet as everyone rested. The two adults were asleep, needing to get ready for their jobs tomorrow. Lincoln was also sleeping on the couch. The parents haven't been informed of this situation, though. Bobby they weren't exactly comfortable of having to keep a child separated from his ever so worried family, but went along with it, as Ronaldo pointed out, and may help shed some light on the situation. Plus, if Lincoln didn't want to speak with his own blood, then why would he want to go back home? Bobby was aroused from his sleep when his phone went off the nightstand. Reaching over, he answered it without looking at the caller ID. Hello? Oh, Bobby, thank God. Bobby Boo Boo Bear, please, 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 tell me you've seen Lincoln at any point tonight. The Hispanic boy was hesitant to answer. Lori sounded so desperate, and he could tell from her broken voice that she was on the verge of crying. But he agreed with his sister and the rest of the family to help Lincoln out and hide him until it was clear of what happened. Lincoln had yet to disclose that information, given after the constant questions. So sorry, babe. I still haven't seen your little bro before I hit the hay. Did you check all over town? Lori sighed on the other end. Yeah, still got nothing though. Our family is turning in for the evening, but thanks for looking out for him. She then stated before hanging up. Guilt filled Roberto like a sponge. Lying to Lori when she was in such a state was the worst thing he ever felt he could ever do, and she most definitely kicked in his keister after she found out the truth. But he needed help from her brother out, and if anything, Lori lied to herself likely had to play in all of this. Next door, Ronalda just lied there in her bed, staring up at the ceiling. She tried to fall asleep even playing a game until she was mentally tired, but all this did make her rest her eyes for only an hour. There was just too many questions she had in mind. It all centered around her secret boyfriend. Ronnie Ann wasn't the one to show pity or sadness, but it was literally tearing her up seeing Lincoln looking like a husk of his former self. Raising her head slightly, she picked up on Bobby's conversation. Of course they wouldn't find him. He's still here after all, she muttered. Staring at nothing for a minute longer, the girl finally sighed in annoyance before getting up and walking towards her door. She just had to know more. Otherwise she'd be driving herself crazy all night with wacky furies. At least that's what she was telling herself. But what was really driving her was the caring and compassionate she cleverly hid. She had to do something, anything, to reignite that flame Lincoln held inside, and she wanted to be there for him as much as possible. Carefully, Ronaldo opened and shut her bedroom door, hoping to notice any cracks and groans and creaks it made. While on the couch, Lincoln tossed to his side, a tired gaze absent from his facial features, since he didn't have any spare clothes with him. He was wearing some of Bobby's PJs. Obviously, they were too big for him, but his other clothes needed to be washed. Glancing at the clock above, it was almost 1 a.m. The ashen-haired boy let out a sigh, doubting that he would get any sleep at this point. He felt the weight of the couch shift as someone sat down. Turning to his right, his gaze matched Ronaldo's. You couldn't sleep? He whispered. Yeah, she whispered back. I still can't either. Still thinking about that fight you had earlier? Lincoln's eyes narrowed. I'm guessing Lori called Bobby? Yeah, they're probably still out looking for you. Well, like I said before, I don't want to speak with them. Speaking and seeing are two different things, Lincoln. Same diff, the boy retorted, suiting himself so he was looking at the ceiling. Just why? Why did they have to make you come all the way out here? They sat there in silence for a few moments. Lincoln continued to lie there, while the Hispanic girl just sat on the other half of the furniture waiting. Ronaldo knew that he'd have to say something at some point. He couldn't have just leave everyone playing the guessing game, and considering this was Ronnie Ann was dealing with, she was unlikely to go back to bed until he confessed. But there were times where I can say my sisters can be pretty selfish. I can be selfish sometimes, and for any misdeeds they've done to me, I've always forgiven them. But I can't forgive them after I went through the past month. Same with my parents. Ronaldo gave a curious look, wanting him to continue. I remember the time I had been pelted by pies during that business model contest. Yeah, I remember that. It must have been brutal getting hit with so many pies. It was worse. I originally planned to make chocolate pies, but my jerk sisters ate all the chocolate I wanted to use, so I had to make do with the salt and vinegar. Even though Clyde won, and I won, I still smelled like garbage for a week, and my reputation was in the toilet until everyone forgot about the whole girl guru nonsense. If those jerks didn't eat up my original idea, then I would have come up with something else, and I wouldn't have ended up thinking about my advice on the girls. What made you think they were suddenly an expert on females? One of my friends wanted me some advice on how to be noticed by someone he liked. It worked, so it seemed like a good idea at the time. Turns out my sister's habits don't apply to everyone. Lincoln glowered. Did your sisters apologize for the whole mess? Yeah, after I angrily told them why I ended up like I did when they laughed at me, just because I smelled like a skunk. And now that I think about them, saying sorry doesn't make up for what I went through after that. And the fact, not to mention the time they got us banned from the grocery store, Lincoln's aggression began to rise as he was starting to go into a rant, similar to his previous one, but this was more controlled and contained no swears. Ronaldo was now beginning to see his sisters as a less positive light. Sure, the Louds in general were a bit chaotic, but as if they both, though they love each other, at the end, guess even a family as large as them, they weren't afraid of throwing each other under the bus at times. However, this didn't explain one thing. Okay, Loud, I get that your sisters can be jerks, but what made you run away? It didn't seem as bad as before, so what changed? Try not to talk so loud, no pun here, she whispered. Sorry, remember on Monday when I told you about the squirrel suit? The tomboy nodded. Having so many sisters, I have to attend to their events every day of the week. I hardly, if at all, get any time to myself. One day I tried to hide from them so they wouldn't notice me, but I forgot about Lynn. She wanted me to come to her softball game, but I didn't want to at all because I wanted to have some time to read the new Ace Savvy comic. He then stared at the blanket in irritation. She threatened me with her bat just to get me to attend her stupid game. Wow, Lynn must be way bigger of a jerk, Ronald muttered. That's not the worst part. Her team lost, and after I gave her my condolences, she calls me bad luck. He spat with venom in his tone, surprising the Hispanic girl. At first, I thought about debunking her accusation, but since she banned me from attending to her games, I saw it as my ticket to gain out of my sister's activities. I know it's selfish, and families are supposed to support each other, but I really wanted the alone time. It worked well, a little too well. There's more? Ronnie Ann asked, not liking where this was going. My lie got to the point where everyone, including my parents. His anger was silent, was still reaching his peak. They bored him out my room and locked me out of the house. Ronaldo's eyes went wide. They didn't? Lincoln nodded. They did. Oh, and the best part? They tried to sell my bed and dresser, but had to throw them out. He was visibly shaking as he was recalling the unforgettable encounter at the dump. Ronaldo then grew a bit nervous and unconsciously shifted a few inches away. The chip-toothed boy looked a second to calm himself before he lost it again. I realized I let the lie drag on for too long and blew out of its proportion. So I told them the truth. They didn't believe me, all because Lynn managed to win 2 games after I was banned, so I had to become the Squirrels' mascot just to prove them I wasn't bad luck. It worked, but now they thought I was good luck, and that's even worse. They cared about my supposed luck at the suspense of making me suffer bad times and get close enough to suffering from the heat stroke. His anger lowered as he began discussing what happened hours ago. I just couldn't take it anymore. Everything I've been through lately and before that, I felt like I was bottling up my anger for a long time. So I released it. I told my entire family off. I even used words no boy my age should ever be using. He held up his bandaged hand. This is the result of me losing complete control of myself, and I got in a fight with Lynn. I told her she was a loser, and she didn't take it well, and we had a major throwdown. She bit my hand as I bit her leg, and that's why the blood was on my mouth. He sniffled a little. At this point, I'm pretty sure I don't even have people I can call my sister or parents for that matter. Lincoln did his best to fight some tears. He didn't want Ronnie Ann to see him crying, but at this point he couldn't help it. I guess my life may have been a leading up to this point. Sure, there were good moments, but after today I might as well have been disowned. He then stated in a broken voice before quietly sobbing to himself, similar to how Ronnie Ann found him earlier. Ronaldo now fully understood Lincoln's position. He had been pushed into his absolute limit of compassion. He had found himself being mistreated by his family one too many times. She didn't know whether this was due to ignorance or was just oblivious. But one thing was for certain in her mind. Lincoln's family was a pack of psychos. Parts of what Lincoln told her she did not wish to believe, but as she continued to stare at the heartbroken boy in front of her, it must have been true. She couldn't believe his entire family locked out of the house on the premises of him being bad luck. And even when the truth was revealed, they still had the gall not to believe in him. Just thinking about it is making her blood begin to boil. From what she knew, Lincoln was a good kid who didn't deserve that kind of abuse. The Hispanic girl's own parents would never even think of locking their own children over such a petty reason. Ronnie Ann shook her head just to get rid of the hateful thoughts chopping up. Right now, her main priority was helping Lincoln. For the first time since the two had secretly been a close relationship, she began to start acting like his significant other. Crawling up to him, the tomboy embraced him in a comforting hug. She didn't care if her shirt got stained by his tears, opting to rub his back in means to help ease his pain. Lincoln, I had no idea you went through so much of a living in a family as large as yours. To be honest, my extended family is probably equally as big, or more so, but I couldn't imagine living with just 12 other people in the same house. I would have lost a lot sooner than you guys. I guess you could say you're much tougher than me emotionally. So sorry if this is being snappy, but I just want you to know I'll always be there to protect you. Ronaldo blushed visibly. Man, that sounded embarrassing, but at least it's the truth. She stated in her head. Hearing Ronnie Ann's comforting words helped him stop the waterworks. However, he could give but a small laugh at a few words she said. You know, it's kind of funny when you're trying to be sappy, he said, and his voice was mixed between broken and a general laughter. Ronaldo then softly flicked his ear. You jerk. I'm trying to be helpful. And the best thing you could say? Well, I'm not crying anymore. If it helps. He gave a small smile. I guess it does, the tomboy released him. You gonna be okay? I guess, the boy said with uncertain. When Lincoln didn't say anything more, Ronnie Ann was just about to get up and head back to her room. However, she took note of the growing redness on Lincoln's cheeks. What? I usually sleep at night. I have Bun Bun to sleep with me. Bun Bun? I still sleep with the stuffed rabbit, okay? He admitted. Ronaldo couldn't help but laugh. I grew out of that phase when I was 4. You could stay here with me? Lincoln asked, slowly hoping that it wouldn't deck him for this later. The Hispanic girl took a moment to think it over. She pulled out and suggested she was irritated, but it was the opposite. She just wanted to see him flinch uncontrollably. But it didn't help that Lincoln looked so cute when he imitated her. Giving her a smirk, make some room, Lamo. Lincoln was rather surprised that Ronnie Ann agreed, but then again it seemed like she wanted to live up to her previous works. Shifting to the right, the girl lied down beside him, getting comfortable as the body heat he had left. Ronaldo got situated under the blanket. The two lied there next to each other, staring at the ceiling. After a few moments, they began to drift off to sleep. Ronaldo then turned to her right side so she was facing the TV before she can let the Sandman fully grasp her. She felt Lincoln's arm slide around her waist. Ronnie Ann? Mm-hmm. Thanks for everything. The boy topped it off by planting a kiss on her cheek. The tomboy was thankful that she was facing away from him, 'cause her face was red as a cherry, and yet she smiled, placing her hand into his. The two finally sleep in their own comforting embrace.